Let me start with a simple truth. Every single morning there's a fight, not between you and the world, but between you and your habits, and the outcome of that fight decides one thing: do you run the day? Or does the day run you? Most people wake up already losing. They grab their phone, they scroll, they react, they let emails, notifications, and other people's priorities hijack their focus, and without realizing it, they hand over control of their life before the day even starts. But high performers, they do the opposite. They decide before the world demands. They don't ask, how do I feel today? They ask, who do I need to be today? Because here's the hard truth: feelings don't build great lives. Decisions do. You don't need more time. You don't need more motivation. You need ownership. Ownership means this: no matter what happened yesterday, no matter how unfair life has been, today is your responsibility. If you're late, own it. If you're distracted, don't it. If you're not where you want to be, own it. Because the moment you own it, you can change it, and change doesn't come from massive, dramatic moves. It comes from daily discipline. Doing the hard thing when it's boring, doing the right thing when no one is watching, doing the necessary thing even when the excitement is gone. That's how confidence is built, not by hype, by proof. Proof that you keep promises to yourself. And every promise you keep tells your brain one thing: I am someone who shows up. That's identity. You don't become disciplined by trying harder. You become disciplined by acting like a disciplined person, especially when it's uncomfortable. And over time, those small actions stack. Focus compounds, effort compounds, self-belief compounds, until one day you look back and realize your life changed because you stopped letting the day control you. So tomorrow morning, when you wake up, remember this: you don't need a perfect day, you just need a directed one. Decide your priorities, control your habits, protect your focus, because when you run the day, you don't just win today, you build the life you've been waiting for. The moment your life begins to change is not when conditions improve, not when people support you, and not when time magically opens up. It changes the instant you stop blaming everything outside of you and start taking responsibility for how you show up every single day. Blame is comfortable. It protects your ego. It gives you a reason to stay the same while convincing yourself it's not your fault. But comfort is expensive, and the price is always paid in lost potential. When you blame time, you're saying your priorities are out of your control. When you blame people, you're handing them power over your growth. When you blame circumstances, you're accepting a story where you're the victim instead of the driver. Ownership flips that story. Ownership says, this is on me. And while that sounds heavy, it's actually the most freeing thing you can do, because responsibility is the doorway to control. Owning your life doesn't mean pretending things are fair. It means deciding that fairness is irrelevant. Plenty of people start behind. Plenty of people face obstacles they didn't choose. The difference is not who had it easier, but who decided to take action anyway. The moment you stop asking, why did this happen to me, and start asking, what am I going to do about it, your brain switches from excuse making to problem solving. Ownership shows up in small, unglamorous moments. It's waking up on time even when you're tired. It's preparing when no one is watching. It's choosing discipline over distraction. It's admitting when you're wrong without blaming stress, pressure, or someone else's behavior. Every time you do that, you reinforce a powerful identity, someone who doesn't outsource responsibility. Most people wait for motivation to save them. Ownership understands that motivation follows action, not the other way around. You don't act because you feel ready because you act. The days you don't feel like showing up are the days that matter most, because that's when ownership becomes real instead of theoretical. When you fully own your actions, your habits, and your reactions, excuses lose their grip. You stop negotiating with yourself. You stop lowering standards to protect comfort. You start building self-respect, because nothing builds confidence like knowing you can be trusted to do what you said you would do. Ownership doesn't make life easy, but it makes it honest, and honesty creates momentum. Momentum creates progress, progress creates belief, and belief changes how you show up the next day. Motivation feels powerful, but it lies. It shows up when things are exciting, when results come fast, and when energy is high. The problem is that motivation is emotional, and emotions are unreliable. They change with sleep, stress, mood, and circumstances. If your progress depends on how motivated you feel, then your success is fragile. The days you feel inspired, you move forward. The days you don't, everything stalls. That inconsistency is where most people get stuck. Discipline doesn't care how you feel. Discipline is not a surge of energy or a rush of confidence. It is a system you follow regardless of mood. It's a set of decisions made in advance, so you don't have to debate with yourself every morning. When discipline is in place, action becomes automatic. You don't waste energy asking, "Do I feel like it today?" You already know the answer, because the system decides for you. Winners understand this difference early. They don't wait to feel ready. They build habits that work even when they're tired, bored, frustrated, or distracted. They design their environment to support discipline by removing friction from good behaviors and adding friction to bad ones. They make it easier to do what moves them forward and harder to do what holds them back. That's not willpower, that's strategy. Motivation can start the engine, but it cannot keep it running. Discipline is what carries you through repetition, through slow progress, through the long stretches where nothing exciting happens. It's what keeps you training when no one is clapping, studying when results aren't visible yet, and showing up when the work feels ordinary. Those are the moments that separate people who talk from people who build. Discipline also builds trust with yourself. Every time you follow through despite resistance, you prove that your word matters. That proof compounds into confidence, not the loud external kind, but the quiet kind that comes from knowing you can be relied on. Over time, discipline reshapes your identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who tries and start seeing yourself as someone who does. Motivation fades, discipline remains. Motivation reacts to circumstances, discipline creates them. When your actions are driven by a system instead of a feeling, progress becomes predictable. And predictable progress is how ordinary days turn into extraordinary results. Most people believe their actions create their identity, but in reality, it works the other way around. What you believe about yourself quietly dictates how you behave when no one is watching. You don't rise to your goals in moments of pressure. You fall to the level of your identity. When things get hard, you don't ask what you want. You act in alignment with who you think you are. That's why goals alone don't change lives. Identity does. If you see yourself as someone who tries, you'll quit when it gets uncomfortable. If you see yourself as someone who is not naturally disciplined, you'll look for exits the moment resistance appears. If you believe you're bad with time, money, or consistency, your behavior will constantly prove that belief right. The brain is wired to protect identity, even when that identity is limiting. It will sabotage progress just to stay familiar. Changing identity doesn't start with affirmations or pretending. It starts with evidence. Every small action you take is a vote for the type of person you are becoming. When you show up on time, you cast a vote for being reliable. When you do the hard thing instead of the easy thing, you cast a vote for being disciplined. One action doesn't redefine you, but repeated actions do. Identity is built through patterns, not moments. This is why willpower alone fails. You can force behavior temporarily, but eventually your identity pulls you back to what feels normal. Lasting change happens when your habits are aligned with a new self-image. Instead of saying, "I need to work out," it becomes, "I am someone who trains." Instead of "I'm trying to focus," it becomes, "I am someone who finishes what they start." Language matters because it reflects belief, and belief shapes behavior. When you upgrade your identity, your decisions start to change automatically. You don't have to argue with yourself as much because certain behaviors no longer fit who you believe you are. Skipping the work feels out of character. Quitting feels unnatural. Consistency becomes less about effort and more about alignment. The most powerful shift happens when you stop chasing outcomes and start reinforcing identity. Goals are useful for direction, but identity determines execution. When you focus on becoming the kind of person who does the work, the results become a byproduct rather than a struggle. Your daily actions stop feeling forced and start feeling inevitable, because they're simply an expression of who you believe you are becoming. Most people underestimate what a single day can do, and at the same time overestimate what one dramatic moment will change. They wait for breakthroughs, for perfect timing, for massive actions that feel important. But life doesn't shift in explosions. It shifts in accumulation. Destiny is not built in a single decision. It is shaped by daily control, by the small choices repeated over and over again until they become who you are. Every day presents hundreds of quiet decisions. What time you wake up, what you focus on first, whether you follow through or postpone, whether you choose the hard action that moves you forward or the easy distraction that feels good in the moment. None of these choices feel life-changing on their own, which is exactly why they're so powerful. They slip past your attention while they're slowly determining your direction. Small, intentional actions work because they compound. One disciplined day doesn't transform your life, but a disciplined pattern does. One focused hour doesn't make you an expert, but repeated focus builds mastery. Progress multiplies when actions are consistent, not intense. This is why people who seem lucky are usually just people who stayed steady when others kept stopping and restarting. Daily control removes chaos from the equation. When you decide in advance how you'll show up, you reduce the role of emotion, stress, and circumstance. You stop reacting and start directing. Over time, this creates momentum. Momentum creates confidence. Confidence reinforces commitment. What started as effort slowly becomes your standard. Every action you take is a vote. Not for the outcome, but for the person you are becoming. When you choose discipline, you vote for reliability. When you choose focus, you vote for competence. When you choose consistency, you vote for self-respect. You don't need to win every vote, but the majority decides the identity you grow into. The danger is not failure, it's drift. Drift happens when days pass without intention, when choices are made on autopilot, when comfort replaces direction. Daily control is the antidote. It's not about perfection or pressure. It's about awareness and commitment to doing a little better today than yesterday. Over months and years, these small actions reshape your skills, your mindset, and your opportunities. What once felt difficult becomes natural. What once required effort becomes routine. Eventually, people call it talent, luck, or destiny without seeing the daily choices that built it. But nothing meaningful arrives by accident. It is earned quietly, one controlled day at a time.